little bit of good, a little bit of bad to start the BWI Live Show today. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We have Ryan Snyder and Sean Fitz, our awesome recruiting reporters over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com to give you the latest news and information for Penn State football. And we actually have a pretty stacked news segment to start the show. As always, just give you the rundown of things, like the video, subscribe here to the YouTube channel. We just crossed 21,000 subscribers, so thank you to everyone who's made that possible. Love all of you and appreciate all of you for being here, especially our hardcore regulars who are here, whether we're at 2 p.m., whether we're in the middle of the night for a live show after a game, or here 10 a.m. talking about recruiting. You guys are the absolute best. Thank you so much for being part of the show. So we're just going to dive into it because there's a ton of information to get to today. And we're going to start with some Penn State recruiting news. And Ryan, I'll come to you on this one to start the show because you were the one who wrote about this yesterday, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, breaking down Gabe Jenkins, one of Penn State's longtime targets in the class of 2027. He was a Terry Smith guy, and he committed to Colorado, which pretty surprising. So what do you make of the situation with the Buffaloes getting Gabe Jenkins' commitment on Wednesday afternoon?
Modern day recruiting. Welcome to, not welcome to, right? We've been watching how the NIL and all that stuff impacts recruiting now for a couple of years. And this is one of the latest examples of, you know, a team that I want to say prioritizes Jenkins more than Penn State, because that's definitely not true. I mean, he was without a doubt. I mean, I still look him as a +1 kind of guy if you know, there's a situation where they can circle back later. But at the end of the day, Colorado was incredibly aggressive. And that's really what it came down to in the end. Financially, they were aggressive. In other ways, they were more aggressive. And, you know, when you're willing to, you know, not just be more aggressive, but maybe 2 times as aggressive, maybe 3 times as aggressive as I think a lot of other schools, you know, saw what his stock or worth should be for a safety position out of high school.
Yeah.
This is how you get that result. And so, you know, one thing I was trying to stress yesterday is like, more power to you, Gabe Jenkins and your family. I mean, I don't blame them one bit for taking the opportunity that Colorado, you know, has presented them. Now the question will be, you know, what is that opportunity in November, right? You know, obviously Colorado did not have a great year last year. Sean, I know you know the Buffs better than me. I do not think they're going to be a whole lot more competitive this year. We'll see. Maybe a couple more wins, but it wasn't a great year last year. So, look, Deion Sanders knows he has to get some wins. He had a win. He has a win here, but I don't 100% know if this one will be completely over with. And listen, I mean, I will say this though, like the financial package and all those things that they have offered him will make it very hard for any school to flip him, which is why I kind of think, you know, it's going to depend on whether Deion Sanders is still the head coach at the end of this year as much as anything, because, you know, what he has on the table, I don't understand how you could possibly go back on that as long as, you know, you have another year with Deion there come 2027. So we'll see.
Fitz, what's your view on that as our resident Buffs expert? In terms of like Deion himself, and then does he want to, like, I don't know anything about, does Deion want to stay? I'm sure there's always a job opportunity out there for him at some other level. So what does that kind of look like? What's the temperature there for Colorado after a good year? And then, you know, they've been Colorado again after a bit.
Yeah, 4.5 is the win total expectation right now. It's not great, and they're not great. But it's just such a fascinating dynamic, because if you're Colorado, if you don't have Deion, what are you? You know, like, it's one of those ones where the coach completely makes the program, and if he leaves, if he's fired, then they go back to not funding the program, which is what they've done for the last decade or so. Decade and a half, maybe. It's the Colorado fan coming out at me. By the way, terrible news this week. Adam Munster-Steiger, our Colorado publisher, passed away this week. So I just wanted to put that in there. And if you can think of him, send out your prayers, your thoughts for his family, because that's just awful at 46. So sorry to bring that one down. But if you look at what Colorado's trying to do, they are obviously trying to elevate the talent level as quickly as possible while they have the funds available to do so. I don't know how much longer the people that are writing those checks that are much bigger than the checks that were 5 years ago for Colorado are going to be able to be sustained. So you take a look at the work that he did bringing all those guys over from Jackson State. He did a wonderful job. It's just how long is that ceiling going to be there? Because it's considerably lower than it was when Shedeur Sanders was there, when Travis Hunter was there. So like, there's a lot going on. And
they did a lot of heavy lifting, right? There was a core that he brought from Jackson State that really was what was special, that they got. The wins he got were, those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just from the outsider perspective, and I follow them closer than probably most, but that's a program that's bound to fall apart when he leaves. And I hate saying that because it's, it's got some tradition and it's got some wonderful things. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Boulder for a game. It's awesome. Like, it's so cool to one of college football's great settings, in my humble opinion. But it's a program that's built on Deion Sanders, and his health, his ability to win there are going to be questions. So like, if you're Gabe Jenkins, I'm right there with Ryan. I don't blame him at all. Khalil Taylor's in the same situation where he's getting a boatload sent his way, and he's going to have to make a decision about the next 4 or 5 years and determine whether, because Deion says he's going to be there, but sometimes that's, as we've often seen, not his choice. So I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out. And welcome to our Colorado segment of our Penn State football show.
We're branching out. We're becoming a national show talking about the Big 12 here. What is the situation a little closer to home, I guess, the sting factor of this one, Ryan, the safety board? How does all of that work out?
Fitz, you got some wedge in here real quick and just say, This is, as Ryan said, the new normal. Like, we're going to be talking, we're not going to talk maybe specific dollar figures, but like, when you talk about Penn State being outspent, and it's going to come up a bunch during official visit season, right, Ryan? I mean, that we're expecting some hits, some misses, just like last year. But that's the nature of the game these days. You could say making excuses, but like, that is the general way that this is going. It's a lot like Major League Baseball, right? Or Premier League Soccer, if you will. It's like the ones that have the money are going to make the splashes, and the other ones have to rely on everything else. And Penn State right now, even though they're 15-ish or so, is in that group of everyone else outside of the top 8 or so. I'm very, very curious how this is going to go. So it's not so much the making excuses. It's kind of explaining what's going on, and we're asking you to interpret that, which is a really dangerous situation because this is also new.
If you don't spell it out for people, then they tend to fill in the
interpretation. Yeah. And the interpretation is broke boys over here, which is not necessarily the case, but you're in tears. You're staggered in tears.
If I could jump in here, this is why we had Pete Nakos on the show yesterday. He wrote his article about what does it cost for certain positions and certain players. And I actually asked him about safety versus corner and how corner is a premier position in the NFL. And it feels like the priority list for college, other than running back, pretty much follows what the NFL does in terms of their salary, tiers in the NFL in a capped area. And his point was defensive backs is kind of how he lumped everything together. A safety, if they feel like it's a playmaking safety, can be more valuable in a system than a corner. There are certain things about college that aren't the same as in the NFL, and you can have safeties because of their impact on the run game, and some teams that like to play quarters. Like, you can have a guy that is more valuable at that position, and then it comes back to the baseball factor of this, that it's not the NFL. There's no cap, and everybody has a pot of money to spend, and they're choosing to spend it differently. So if Colorado thinks that Gabe Jenkins is going to turn their program around, they will throw a lot of money at one player. Penn State has been taking the it seems like, the roster approach, the overall approach of like, we want to build a well-balanced and deep team and not try to just throw money at individual players, even though some guys do make more than others. Like, they're just not in that model. So this, to kind of just back up what you guys are saying and what Pete was outlining, is this will happen if one team decides that Khalil Taylor's worth a lot of money, or that somebody else is worth a lot of money. And it makes sense that Deion Sanders, a guy who likes stars, who, has a superstar model as somebody who was a superstar in the NFL and thinks like the impact players matter the most, would do something like this. So Ryan, back to you with my question from earlier. How does that figure into Penn State's situation at safety?
They'll be all right. They have Jonathan Gillette, of course, committed right now, and there's quite a few other guys they're in the mix with. I think, if you pay attention to Twitter or our site, Malachi Taufu, I believe, he's committing tomorrow, I believe, or no, Saturday. I'm sorry. He's committing either way. He's committing in the next couple of days here. I don't expect it to be Penn State. We're talking about Colorado throwing money. Who's also throwing money right now? Cal. What a wild world we live in right now. Tosh Lupoi, of course, coming over from Oregon. Yeah.
Cal, where do you think he learned those lessons?
Not a huge surprise on that matter, but like, it's
It was funny because you brought up, we were talking about was it Lucas Roja, I think the other day, Sean, and I was like, man, who's that Cal now? And then I pulled it up and I was like, it all makes complete sense now. So,
yeah.
but you know,
recruiter, and there's a new coach spending bump, right?
Yeah,
it's happening a lot of
absolutely. Absolutely. Look, safety board, I think will be okay. You know, Nair Crumb's certainly a guy I think Penn State's very interested in. Of course, Cooper Almott's still very much in the mix as well. You know, I wrote a big notebook on it yesterday. I'm not going to get into everything. I think there's one or two guys they can still pursue that, you know, are uncommitted right now that we haven't talked about as much. I dropped one of those names in that notebook yesterday, and you know, we can get into that here in the coming weeks and months. The last thing I just kind of would say though about all this is like, this is why, in my opinion, at least in the current landscape, like it's going to be very, very difficult for Penn State to ever have a top 10 class when situations like this are constantly happening. And, you know, there are, in my opinion, about a dozen schools that are just kind of on a different, let me clarify. There's probably about a half a dozen schools that are truly on a different level right now. And then every year you get a handful of either, you know, new coach situations, schools that have a lot of money, but, or, you know, are desperate for this reason or another, that kind of filter in that back half of the top 10 or maybe a little bit outside of it. And, you know, that's why I think just in the current landscape, you know, if you're a Penn State fan and the way that I think Matt Campbell is going to go about it, which is quite honestly very similar to how James Franklin went about it, you're aiming for top 12 classes. Like if you can get 11, 12, 13, like to me, at least in the moment, that feels pretty much like Penn State's ceiling.
Yeah.
Am I wrong with that, Sean? I mean, they can obviously crack a top 10, but like to land the 5 stars to do that is going outside of their norm. I mean, it would have to be a hell of a 4-star haul. Right. Quite a few guys maybe getting late ratings that aren't getting quite the pay that maybe their ratings.
Well, that's how Penn State's
that was what I was
5
thinking.
stars, right? That's going to be the Cooper Cousins model where you take them early and then they develop into a 5-star. They, you know, there's a couple of guys that have been that example. Malachi Goodman, for example, I think either just outside 5-star range, but like steadily moved up after committing. And
he was one spot outside of 5-star for Rivals, and then 24/7 made Goodman
really commit that to memory, because
I know I'll never forget. He was one. I was like, come on, guys, like really helped my headlines there. But okay, anyway. So
and on top of that, I mean, just you look at the concentration of 5 stars right now, and 5 at Texas A&M, 2 at Texas Tech, 2 at Oklahoma, 1 at USC, 1 at Notre Dame, 2 at Miami, 2 at Ohio State, 1 at Florida, 2 at LSU, and 1 at Texas. So these aren't exactly, again, broke boys that are.
And I said 5-star, Sean. I mean, it's really top 100 recruits.
Oh yeah,
top 100 recruits have been a problem for 2-3 years now. And I mean, you really got to go back to just after the Allard, Nick Singleton kind of class where it's like, okay, they were getting them here a little bit, but like since
you could see the line where it stopped. You can see the June where it stopped. Yeah.
It's been about 2 classes now, I'd say. This is going on the 3rd, I would think, where it's just like that is going to be a problem. And when you have 50 plus other Power 4 schools, there's a good chance 1 or 2 of them, you know, are desperate enough from this situation or that situation or whatever it may be that they'll splash some cash and you run into a situation like this. So good on Gabe Jenkins and his family. I don't blame them one bit for taking the opportunity. I'd still be surprised if Penn State does not circle back later. Of course, you know, it'll depend on how Colorado's doing, but you know, he's a +1 in my eyes, and you know Terry Smith well enough. I think we all have followed Terry. No, he ain't going to give up.
That's how he's a +1. I think, you know,
right.
He's in
a and that is right.
The country might be different, but
yeah. So time will tell. We'll see. But look, they'll be okay at safety. I really like Nair Crumb. Honestly, the more I talk to people about him, I think he's a really good player. Down at the Matha, of course, he just did a in-home visit with Broomfield last week. Has an official visit coming up, and Mott too. And you know, Giovanni Hanley's still out there. Of course, he's the other kid from Juniper Serra. I just don't see those 2 California. I see those 2 California safeties getting enough money from West Coast schools that I don't. The pros and cons of coming east just don't add up.
Right. Yeah. We have a couple of things here in the chat. We don't have a mailbag today, but this feels like a really good point to do that because there's some really interesting things. And I think some good follow-ups here in the chat from people watching here live. If you want to be a part of that, drop your questions or comments in the chat. And of course, you don't have to donate to the channel, but Greg did. And he said, Anti-Fragile Be Your fund for misquoting Fitz, I guess last week or on Tuesday. So appreciate
it was on the message board. I think he said, Ryan said something and he, attributed it to me, and I'm like, I don't even remember talking about this guy, and sure enough, that was Ryan. So
talking tight ends, yeah.
I think it was actually Parkinson, George Parkinson, the 4th.
Oh,
so,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
Or maybe it was that too. I don't know. Who knows?
Two questions here.
We all have one face, and that's what people see.
It's
you know,
Memorial Day weekend,
regardless
man.
of-
Just get me through. Although this
Yeah,
weekend's gonna suck, by the way. I'm looking at the weather right now.
It's already cold and raining here in State College, and I
bummer.
imagine you're going to get the same weather in about 2 hours based on
Well,
temperature and
already
speed
here.
of.
Already here.
Oh, okay, all right. So 2 questions here about NIL. Didn't Penn State get a new coach spending bump? Obviously implying why aren't they in this conversation of being able to go after guys? What's your response to that? Ryan, Fitz,
Sean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend. I don't know. Did they? I mean, there's a lot of talk, a lot of bravado.
There's more money available, but in the sense of inflation, there's more money available for everyone. Like 30 million does not go as far as it used to. And I don't know that that's the exact number. That's the number that was flaunted about at that point, but 30 million does not go as far as it used to. And you're talking about places like UCLA, which you can look at their class right now and say, oh, they got some money dumped into it. Like,
yeah,
there's a spending bump, and then there's like a, I don't know, no limit credit card type thing. UCLA is not quite no limit, but like you see the difference between
the drunk spending versus the sober spending is how it feels.
And
you go out on a Saturday
it.
night.
Yeah, no, and it's certainly not my money. I don't mind it as a strategy because that's how you build your base. That's your foundation for the next couple of years, is coming in and striking this 2027 class, which not only provides you with an infusion of talent, in the first 2 years of your tenure there, but also it gives you the opportunity to say, hey, we can recruit. Like, we can recruit on a national level. So the guys, like if you look at UCLA's class, a lot of Texas guys in there right now. And of course, the coach came from JMU, so it's, and right up the road here, but it's a different kind of approach when you've got all those Texas guys. Now, will they hang on to all those guys? I don't know. It's a lot like the Oklahoma.
It's hard
stuff
to buy reputation, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing. It's hard to, when you're UCLA or you're Cal and you have been in a situation where you are clearly below where maybe even your historical standards are, or where you want to be, either one. Like, at a certain point, the question is, can you pay for standard? Can you pay for reputation? And this is the attempt to do it, I guess.
Well, that's the whole like timeline for a coaching staff and a coaching change is, you get the money up front, and then what do you do with it? And then all of a sudden the results aren't what you thought they would be, and then the money stops. Like, and then it's like, oh, where's my return? Not that return on investment's a thing in NIL spending with donors, but it's like, where's the return here? And all of a sudden, hey, I'm onto the new coach, the new shiny object that I want to invest my next money into. So like that's kind of like the catch-22, shooting yourself in the foot in the long term, and seeing how long you can limp it out. So that's what I'm looking at right now with, not that I think Bob Chesney's going to fail at UCLA, but I think it's just going to be different than the initial bump. You look at Florida right now is doing great. Florida recruited really well when they were terrible. Like, I'm not saying they're going to be great, but like you look at Florida, that's a top 10 class when they were, with Billy Napier. That's says something right there. So you've got a lot of different situations there, and Penn State, I think, is leaning into what they are. It's an evaluation and development staff, and they're leaning into their Midwest roots, as you see by this class. They got to do better in Pennsylvania, and they're going to have to do better with elite talent, which we don't know how that's going to go yet. And very, very well could be a similar situation to what we saw last summer, which was kind of a bloodbath. So I think that's realistically looking at the next couple of weeks is going to be where you choose to spend your money, because number one, bidding wars are not great. Like,
not great for any of the people involved, but the player, right?
Right. There are schools that you cannot compete with, but at the same time, like, the total that you tell that kid on June 15th isn't necessarily going to be the total that's going to come through in November when they can actually put this on paper, or December when they actually sign, because say Jameer Dean, Georgia's going to come after him. Other programs are going to come after them. And every time something happens like that, you just kind of get up. And it's going to make your $10 million class a $12 million class, or $15 million class by December. Like, I'm not saying that those are the numbers for Penn State, but I'm just saying in round number form, like, what you are spending on right now is not going to be the same total as it's going to be in December, because natural, I don't know, what's the lack of attrition, or what's the opposite of attrition? Like, natural progression of these recruitments is going to mean more expensive wins in the end for everybody.
This is something I talked about a couple I think last year when we were discussing like the opportunity for all these things to come together when it comes to NIL, and you mentioned new coach bump there in spending. I want to highlight two more things here in the chat, and then we can get on to the second part of today's intro. And so Jadon wants to know, based on the podcast yesterday, how in the world did Virginia Tech pay all of those quarterbacks? And this isn't an anti-Virginia Tech hate thing. It's just a lot of money to spend at one position. So, just to give people who didn't see it, by the way, definitely go check out the Pete Nakos interview. He was talking about quarterback commits, top 5, top 10 quarterbacks, $1 to $1.5 million for a top 10 quarterback that you're thinking is going to be your starting quarterback for the future. So let's just do the transitive math. Peter Bork was a top 10, 9th overall player in the class of 2027, and a guy that James Franklin had been recruiting for a very long time. So like we can ballpark some of these numbers and also consider the fact that he had to lure Ethan Grunkmeyer away from Penn State and Bryce Baker away from North Carolina. He also recruited Troy Hune. That is a lot of money at the quarterback position, and this is one of the things that we talked about in that conversation is how do you stack talent at that position without dumping like 10% of your NIL into one position? So I'd say the new coach bump that you talked about explains some of that, and James Franklin talked about that. Virginia Tech has talked about that, how they are now spending money. So yeah, it's just it's an interesting situation. And then on the flip side, UBS Calzone, this is why you should definitely listen to what we say here on the show, and you should listen to what Nate Bauer has to say when he talks about Penn State's NIL situation, Pat Kraft, and all those things. He says, like to give it more time, but I got the impression from Pat Kraft that moving forward, we'd be able to compete in the NIL world with top teams. So far, don't see that as the case. Again, if you go back to what we were saying on the show, that's what the model Pat Kraft wanted. He wanted to be Colorado. He wanted to be a team that would have an NFL model. Well, you know what I mean, of like splashing for talent. Oregon, like I can't say that he wanted to be Oregon because they don't have a blank check, right?
I don't know that that's the case, T. Frank. I think it was a press conference that, obviously it's we're all talking about the press conference when Franklin got fired.
Yes.
I always looked at that as like, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. And look,
but that's the point.
If you're the AD, you kind of have to go out there and rally the troops. I understand it to some point, and Pat's a very charismatic person, so maybe it came out a little too much of being a little too aggressive in some of the ways he was kind of painting that picture.
Yeah.
But this has been a problem for Penn State from day one, and it's not really going away at the moment. I'm not saying it can't change. I'm not saying that it won't change down the road, but at the end of the day, there's no great white whale out there throwing dumb money like Texas Tech has, like Oregon has, like Miami has. I mean, that's the difference with some of these schools. It really is one or two people that are just kind of throwing dumb money.
I was thinking about this. If you want to scratch the itch as an NFL owner, but you aren't an NFL owner, why not donate to your favorite college team? Phil Knight is not an NFL owner. I'm sure
because if you're an NFL owner, you get billions and billions of worth in a franchise where you get nothing back from this. Nothing.
But my point. Well, you can write it off as a donation. I imagine you can live as a loss.
No,
you can't anymore. Oh, no, well, there you go.
That's a big part. So,
but at the same time, like I think everyone points to Terry Pagula. I was thinking about this the other day. Jerry Jones isn't making Arkansas into the SEC power as another very famous billionaire willing to spend money. If you own an NFL team, you're already fully committed and involved in the managing of a football team. It probably gives you what you were looking for. And like, you'd like your college team to win. You would like that to be a reality, but you're going to focus all your time and effort on your NFL team because you already have that thing. You don't need that. Like, there isn't that burning desire to have your team win because you actually own a team, an NFL team. And obviously the billions of dollars, that's the point too. But to USB Calzone's point, like Matt Campbell's not that guy. Matt Campbell wasn't going to be a guy who wanted to go out and splash the pot for individual players like a Gavin McKenna in a different sport. Like that has been what Nate has said here on the show when it comes to the NIL approach and the NIL situation that Pat Kraft outlined and what his vision was. Kalani Sitake didn't work out. Now they have Matt Campbell, who's much closer to the James Franklin model. So like, just to give everyone the lay of the land of like what happened in October of last year, we've been telling you, like, great reason, great promotion to subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. because that's where the information about how these things change over time happens. Join for just $1 right now, and you get 50% off your first year. And that's a big deal. We've changed that, by the way. It used to be join for a week to try us out, and then you can just join us. Now, if you join for $1, new members only, you join for 50% off for the full year. So get in for $1, and then you pay half price for the rest of the year. And speaking of paying for things, I want to give a huge shout out to Justin at Liberty Lumber Products. They are doing great stuff. They have not just Penn State stuff, but if you're a fan of a bunch of different schools, you can go check out their quality Liberty Lumber products on their website. But of course, this is the Penn State show, and so we're going to talk to you about their Penn State stuff. And they've got, and I know I've saying this for a while, they got a ton of new stuff coming up, so just stay tuned for that. But here is Justin from Liberty Lumber Products to tell you about more.
How's it going, Nittany Lion fans? My name is Justin. I'm born and raised in Pennsylvania, and this is my wood shop. We are Liberty Lumber Products. Come here, I want to show you a few things. So my company is now officially licensed with Penn State. So I want to show you the products that are now available at our online store. We now have some coasters that are available. These are handmade by our team here at Liberty Lumber Products. We have some very talented carpenters here. And we also have this cooler that's now available. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. Please follow us on our socials and check out what we have coming next. We got some big things.
So I know we've been saying that for a little bit, but they got some great stuff now. Everything has to get approved, right? So they've been prototyping a bunch of things, and they've got some cool stuff on the way in terms of the Penn State gear and the Penn State products. But those coasters are awesome. The coolers, if you want to have some Memorial Day and some summertime fun, and you want your Penn State fan gear to be a part of it, you can use promo code PSUFans for 10% off your first purchase at Liberty Lumber Products. The link is in the description of the video. And 3, 2, 1. Okay, I put it in there. So it's in there. You're good to go if you want to go and check that out at Liberty Lumber Products. Appreciate them for being a sponsor of the show. And I'm excited because I was talking to him yesterday, and he said they've had some issues this spring with, things in the shop. He's had to do more of the actual woodworking and less of the business side, but they have some cool stuff coming. So make sure you check them out regularly to find out when they drop their new line of tables and things from Penn State. Okay, so I mentioned there's some good news. And Ryan, you put in an RPM recently for a Penn State football player to land in Happy Valley. So can you take us into your process for this one? And if you want to, you're on mute just in case you didn't know that. Who and what, when, where, why, how?
Definitely did not know that. Thank you, T. Frank. Sean Curry, tight end out of the Lawrenceville School in New Jersey, 6'7", 235. I'll repeat, 6'7", 235. And that is
who does that sound like?
Big reason why Penn State is pushing in on Curry. They need size. So if you've been on the board, we've kind of been tracking tight ends for a while, right? Of course, Cooper Terwilliger commits. Was he 6'3", 215-ish? And for a while, it felt like Parker Newman was kind of more their guy. Well, gets on campus, not quite the same size that they were hoping to see. And as time goes on, they've kind of a bit more of a shift towards Curry and Colt Lumbers, his teammate, of course, who it's funny because Colt Lumbers was the smaller receiver kind of type tight end for a long time. And now all of a sudden he's 240 pounds. So that's kind of shifted their mindset there a little bit. But Curry, it was Ohio State, Texas A&M, Penn State for a little while. Ohio State kind of seems to have I don't think they have a tight end committed or anything like that, or at least not behind the scenes, but they're either trying to pick somebody off from another school or maybe going to go portal. Either way, it doesn't feel like Ohio State's pushing all that hard there at the end. And so it really was A&M and Penn State. Well, A&M was always kind of a distant third. And so that's kind of where I feel like Penn State's in a very good position here. I don't think he's going to last till OVs, and I think a commitment could come fairly soon, maybe this weekend, maybe early next week. We'll see where things go. I'm not sure what he's put out there yet, but I know he's thinking about it. So I think Sean Curry is going to be the second tight end in this class, and a good chance that he will be the next player to commit to the Nittany Lions. When exactly that'll be, we will see. But size is the big thing here. They're looking for somebody who can do a little bit of everything as far as put their hand in the dirt and while also, of course, catch passes and all that. And Curry fits that more than Terwilliger, who I'm not saying he won't put his hand in the dirt, but just size-wise, there's a big difference.
Yeah, that I was surprised how good of a blocker he was just there on the highlights at 6'7". A lot of times, if you're 6'7", you don't get that kind of leverage, and it's a really impressive
played
prospect.
football for a couple of years, I think, too. I thought it was like 2 or 3 years. So, there's still plenty of polishing to do. He was a big lacrosse player for a really long time. So.
Thank you. Finally, we're talking Evan Royster territory here because he was committed to UVA for lacrosse, which is pretty impressive. UVA, obviously a top team down there. But to be that player on the lacrosse field at 6'7" says something about his athleticism, his ability to move laterally. I think that there's a lot to like there. And yeah, you put the tape on, it's hard not to think about Ben Bramer. So a big target and a guy that can really help you in the red zone and beyond too, which is what Bramer has done at Iowa State the last couple of years.
So that one feels good for Penn State football and is I think building another solid tight end class for the Nittany Lions. We'll see where all that goes. Of course, Ryan has done his reporting about what is next at the tight end position, and we'll get into that a little bit later in our OV preview. But I do want to come back to you, Ryan, because you had something that I'm very interested in, which is you talked to Will Wood's quarterback coach, M2 Quarterback Academy, Mike McCarthy. And so not the new coach of Drew Aller with the Pittsburgh Steelers, different Mike McCarthy. So how was that conversation? What was that like, and what'd you learn?
Good. Mike's a known trainer in the New England area for a long time, right? He actually trained Peter Bork and Will Wood, which was fun to kind of talk about the ins and outs of that. And yeah, a couple big takeaways. I mean, I think that when it comes to Will, it's not really a surprise what stands out, right? Great extending plays, very good deep ball, all those kind of things. I mean, I thought that was kind of what I saw. I think T. Frank, you would agree. Sean, everybody would kind of agree. Those intangibles, or I guess that'd be tangibles. The intangibles more so are leadership and all those kind of things. One talk we had a good conversation we had about was Henry Hasselbeck, who of course is at UCLA now, and sitting behind him and how much that helped Will learn. Not that he wasn't already a leader and incredibly driven, all those kind of things, but to really how to be a quarterback from a leadership perspective, sitting that first year at Xavier and Brothers, but behind a very respected player in Henry Hasselbeck. So, that and the progression then that you saw from him as a junior really, I think is what's the best way to put it? That's what maybe put it over the line of it's not worth maybe overextending a little bit for Peter Bork, if that makes sense for where Penn State's mind was at the time. I think Matt Campbell's been incredibly high on Will Wood for a long time, and I think that's kind of how this played out the way it did. But just kind of learning what he's done behind the scenes and how he progresses and how much work he's putting in, I think that really fit the Matt Campbell. And that's not to say Peter Bork wasn't, but when you're weighing the money, which again, like we got to get this mindset of like every team has to weigh the money, and everybody wants this highly rated guy, but that's so far out of the equation now. So just a lot of those kind of things. I think he spoke incredibly highly of Jake Waters as well, and just kind of his, what's the right word? How much he cares about development, how much he wants to develop guys, and how much he needs to understand, where's this player at now? What are you guys doing on it? And how can we get that better? Just a lot of thorough, in-depth questions that, McCarthy spoke very highly of when it comes to Jake Waters. So I think Penn State has their quarterback. Maybe they'll get another one later in the year. We'll see how that all plays out. But Penn State's very happy with Will Wood, and everything that I've learned, I guess you'd say, even prior to his commitment and even now, it makes a lot of sense. Like this is a Matt Campbell guy, through and through. So it makes sense. Let's see how things progress though here moving forward.
Make sure you go read that over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Just going to put this up here again. Join for $1, then you get the rest of the year half off. I mean, just handing it out almost for free. Not obviously not. And your time and your money is valuable to us, and that's why we want to give you this opportunity for new members only. Join us for $1, 50% off for the first year to get access to a lot of these great intel and reporting and conversations that our guys here have with the recruiting aspect of things, and then the football side as well. Let's get into today's main topic, which is the official visits, which are coming up next month, and really at the beginning of this month because it's not all the way through June.
Nope. Penn State's not doing that. They're not doing it for 2 more weeks, so there's not going to be
2 more weeks.
Right, Sean? There's no May. I don't think they're not doing that first weekend.
But
so, 2 more
weeks. But you traditionally, like you could at the end of May host.
Most schools are.
I mean,
Yes.
schools have already done so. I mean, Jenkins took his Colorado official last weekend, and like you can do it starting in April. But Penn State has chosen to go the other route. You remember when Stanley Montgomery came off his January trip, I think it was, and he's like, all right, I sent my official visit for May 31st. And, we cross-check that, and they're like, no, we're not doing that. So you're looking at the 5th, the 12th, and then a smaller one, the last weekend before the dead period, which is the 19th. So
that is what I wanted to ask you guys about. Yeah. It's interesting the way the tactics, the way they've stacked this, where it feels like everyone, like the largest contingent is on the 5th. It feels like it's official visit week, essentially.
Well, the commits are coming that weekend, so
right. But then a lot of the top targets and the guys that they want to like get into the class, some of the guys I want to talk about here, it feels like a lot of those guys are on that 5th, and then the next week there's a couple of guys that are coming as well. Is that fair to say?
I think so. Yeah. If you look at, I did a notebook yesterday where I outlined all the visit weekends in terms of what's available and what's, what's basically going to happen is I don't know that third weekend is going to be much of anything. So Ryan, if you're doing your schedule for your calendar, make your vacations on the first weekend and the second weekend. So
I just scheduled them for August now, but yes, go on.
I found out mine got scheduled for me on the 18th. So I won't be here for that final weekend, unfortunately.
Terrific. No, so you're looking at the first weekend, and I'm curious how it's going to go because like ideally you've got a dry run in there. You've got an opportunity to when you step onto campus with your new recruiting staff, figure out all the bells and whistles that you want to toot, I guess. And I'm not sure. I'm not a music guy.
I get it.
But like if you want to like run through what you're trying to do and then kind of make it a dress rehearsal and then go the next weekend. So I mean, there's a lot on them that first weekend. Now, the counterbalance there is you've already got guys that are bought in. You've got most of the class that's there. I think Jonathan Goulette's coming in the second weekend. He's the only commit that's not coming in that first weekend as of right now. So you've got some, cushion to play with because those guys are already on board and they want to be there. So like it's going to be I don't want to say a tough sell in that first weekend, but it's going to be interesting to see them work out the bells and whistles or work out the kinks. Sorry, I'm all over the board with my cliches and instruments and everything right now. But work out the kinks over the first weekend in real time is going to be fascinating to watch from a recruiting nerd perspective. More, I don't think it's
the deep dive,
surface, but yeah,
all up in them weeds.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of momentum and they want to get guys here on campus soon. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to drag it out. And it looks at who they're bringing. They're all priority guys. So I think the goal is to try and get a few more commitments out of that. Get yourself to 21 ish, maybe by mid-June, 22.
I think they can be at 20 by the time they start. With official visits. So like,
we got Curry coming up here. I think, which by the way, I see that's now out on our board. Sean Curry's going to announce tomorrow, which I see is popping out there. So
try to be sneaky.
Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, so that's now fans know that. But that would be what night? Is he the night? He'd be the 19th. They're at 18 right now, I believe. So yeah, they could definitely be at 20. Sean, you wrote a good little article yesterday on some guys keep an eye on. So I will push fans to read that. But I don't know. I mean, there's part of me that still wonders, like, I know the whole 30 class talk was pretty big in the beginning, but I still wonder a little bit as now they've gone through spring practice if they've kind of thought more portal to fill gaps than maybe going all the way to 29, 28, 30. We'll see. It's just kind of something that's popped up a little bit in conversations with people.
And I know that you kind of just stated it, but how much do they have to think, or how much do you have to think about the portal this early? Because I'll say, like, you don't know if Tony Rojas is going to go to the NFL or if somebody's going to leave.
There's so many other gaps.
Somebody's going to leave early.
It's not even about that. It's about all the holes in their depth chart from a massive turnover like that. You were never going to have your roster looking like it was, where it was, you had, it wasn't perfect before, right? But for the most part, it was, the rooms were way more filled and you knew what was coming, where like tight end, for example. I mean, look at all the upperclassmen D linemen, like there's some holes here that, like, there's no way you can fill those with high school guys. And that was always part of the plan. Don't get me wrong. Like, this was still going to be a bigger portal year than I think Penn State fans were used to. Obviously not like this past January, but in previous years.
Well, I mean, I just kind of said this on the board earlier. It's like, it's a step down from last year because they're, you knew that you were going to have to replace half the roster, whatever. It's not going to be half the roster this year, but there's a ton of 1-year players that are on that group. And then there's going to be there's going to be players that decide that this is not the program for them, which is, I think, natural attrition. But after a coaching change, you have to account for that. You have to figure out where these guys fit into the depth chart and everything. And so I think you're going to go a step down from where you were last portal cycle, but also still above where they want to be. And I think that's natural. I mean, you're talking maybe 3 years, but probably 2 years in terms of fleshing that out into bigger portal classes than typical, because this, again, they want to be a developmental staff. They want to be a recruiting staff. And that's hard to do unless you've got that baseline, that foundation to work with.
Yeah. They're going to get a full class. It's just going to be like, at the end of the day, are there, instead of pushing for a flip here to get to 27, 28, 29, especially after spring practice, like that's the one thing I'll stress is like, they know what they have now, especially with the guys that they didn't get to work with. And I think now that they've gone through that process, there's a little bit more consideration of like, hey, look, if we can flip somebody, quality guy, high school guy, let's go. But maybe let's not take someone to take someone, if that makes sense. And that's always been the case. I could probably word that better, but we'll see. We'll see how it is. Now that I'm saying this, they're going to sign
a guy they like, but maybe don't love, right? Or a guy that they could fill a role, or maybe a long tail developmental guy, but isn't going to be somebody that maybe
it just takes time to do the scouting,
right?
And like, so like, yeah, sure, maybe there's some guy out there in the Midwest that they know about, whatever it may be, but like they're not fully in yet in the Mid-Atlantic region where you can kind of pick off guys easier from a Maryland, Syracuse, wherever it may be later in a cycle if you need to do that. And that's where I kind of think that maybe that's why a portal would be a little bit more the way to go later.
So the numbers look a little bit tighter then going into June. And this is something I've been thinking about, in terms of these are the top remaining prospects, because some of their top prospects have already decided to join. We've talked about how this went from June was the month for getting like the topper on your class, whether it was top prospects, the final numbers, pushing guys across the line. But now it feels like it's kind of a squeeze of just the last one or two drops out of the lemon to make the lemonade. So I want to go through a couple of spot battles that are left based on the numbers they need and the positions that aren't filled yet. And so I wrote down a couple of positions. I'm just curious how you guys feel about these, and if there are other ones that you want to highlight as well. But defensive tackle seems like a very interesting one to me. So I wanted to start there. Fitz, what do you think about the defensive tackle board and what they have going there heading into June as far as securing maybe some of the guys they want for this particular class? How do you think all that's setting up?
Yeah, defensive tackle, still one of those spots. I think there's probably going to be some movement, in the next couple of weeks, maybe even before official visit season. You look at a couple of different guys that have official visits scheduled. Andy Paiva from Utah is one that really jumps out here. Enz Martukes from New York, who was just down a couple of weeks ago. Really the only visitor during the spring evaluation period, while most of the coaches were out on the road. He came down with mom, which I think is a sign. It's a sign that he's interested in potentially moving this thing closer than he wants to, or closer than the official visit season. So you've got an opportunity to maybe close on one of those guys. They're using their leverage. I'm not saying they're playing them up against each other, but if you talk to both these guys, they have a certain indication of how many defensive tackles Penn State will take, and certainly tells me that they want to get those guys in the class quicker than you would think. So be interested to see how this all comes together. But I think they're fine there. Akaka Malloy has been all over the place looking at different guys, and I think he's settled on those two. Sean St. Fleur at DeMatha is another guy that's got an official visit set up, but is it a possibility that they get to where they want to be before he's going to take that visit? I think it's certainly possible.
I just want to jump in here with some of the things, because I cracked open Andy Paiva's highlights here this morning. I haven't had a chance to fully get to him yet, but this week I was viewing a coaching clinic on how the former UCLA, current Penn State D-line staff likes their defensive linemen to play. And what you're seeing here on film is a good example of the early techniques of what they like from their guys in terms of how they want to defeat double teams. And so Paiva, I think he's an interesting, really good fit with upside. and not a whole lot of highlights. So I'm curious if he commits to dive into his full game footage more to see what else is there, because there's athleticism, but kind of a short highlight tape because you're seeing almost all of it here. And then Tukes is another guy that I think has a lot of upside and is just a super talented football player. You think they're going to take one of these guys because they need to add in some veterans later, or is there a situation where they can land? Because I think both these guys are good. I think both these guys fit the system. So do you think that there's an opportunity to get both of them, or did the numbers not work out?
I think
they'd
take both. If it's somewhat soon, right, Sean?
It's the old trick, like you don't turn down big bodies that can move. And these guys are different players. Tukes is 6'3.5". 260,
super long.
Yeah, he's gonna grow into more that, I don't want to say traditional defensive tackle, but the guys that you're used to seeing here. And then you've got basically a nose there in Paiva. Yeah. So I have a very tough time if both of those called up and said, "Hey, we want to go to Penn State," that they're going to say, "No, we're just going to not do that." So I mean, it's just
right.
There's only so many of those bodies floating around. You got to take them when you can take them. So yes, I understand that they're talking about just taking two. Yeah, I mean, I would be absolutely stunned if they decided to pass on one of those players.
Okay, so Ryan, what's the other position that you think is most interesting here for June and official visit season, as far as maybe leverage or players to commit during the actual official visit weeks?
It's a good question. I mean, safety is obviously interesting because they need one more there. Obviously, wide receiver, I guess we could go to, right, with Khalil Taylor, Deshaun Hall still out there. Who am I missing? Jaden Baldwin, another one. Mm-hmm. I don't get the sense they're pushing all that hard for Isaiah Alvarez. I got to kind of dig on that one a little bit more. But I think receivers interesting from the perspective of Khalil Taylor is going to be getting a similar package that Gabe Jenkins got, if not maybe better. And so how does that play out? Because depending on how he shakes out, it kind of impacts how hard they would maybe go for, a guy like Jaden Baldwin then or some others down the road. Because, I mean, how deep is that board, Sean? It's only 4 guys, right? Brian Walker's more of a camp guy. I'm trying to think of who beyond those 3.
Well, they got 2 commits. I mean, I know. Dean, you're going to kick this about and say Georgia and all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, they do have 2 commits with Landon Blum and Jameer Dean.
Right. We'll see with Jameer Dean. I kind of have him as a 50-50 guy at the moment.
But, and that's why I'm saying the board's just not as big.
Yeah.
They want Deshaun Hall. They want Deshaun Hall probably more than people realize. And I think that's a massive target. I don't think he's going to end up here, but I think it's a massive target. So
for sure. But to me, it's just
figuratively and literally. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just very curious with Khalil Taylor. That's really kind of where I'm going with that, is just because, man, it's going to be something similar to what Gabe Jenkins has. And we just sat here in 20 minutes at the beginning of the show saying, hey, can't blame you, Gabe Jenkins. Well, if that happens with Khalil Taylor in Colorado, I can't blame him there either. So that'll be interesting to watch. But
so can I just ask you a follow-up? This is kind of I want to ask this in a fan-centric way. So just follow me here. We've talked about Gabe Jenkins or other players that other teams have splashed the pot for. And we're now into June. And so who is Penn State going to do that for? It seems like they have not done that. Just as the perception out here, they haven't gotten any of these what feel like upset wins. It feels like the guys that want to commit committed, and it's not necessarily, it's the pre-NIL conversation. We're now having these NIL conversations about receivers, D-line, edge defenders, whomever. So is Khalil Taylor a guy worth splashing the pot for and making sure, okay, sorry, Colorado, you're not getting our guy from our backfield. This is a perception win for us defending our territory and getting a top 10 guy in Pennsylvania to stay home. Or are they just going to be conservative and the money needs to go where it needs to go? I think that's where fans are frustrated. It's like, okay, so when is Penn State going to splash the pot? And who is it going to be for?
Sean.
Ryan, you got this one?
I don't think they are. I don't think it's. I don't think that they have the pot to splash. And I think that
it depends what you mean by splashing the pot. Splashing the pot on Penn State's end would be matching whatever Notre Dame's giving Abraham Sesse. It's they're not going to come over the top and be big spenders and be guys that blow every other offer out of the water. Khalil Taylor's already got a massive offer. You've got to be competitive more so than anything. And being competitive is expensive too, especially when you look at some of these numbers that these guys are trying to pull in.
Yeah, it seems like a frustrating situation for fans that see these guys moving off is all. And it feels like, as we've outlined, like they're not going to be the biggest spender, but at a certain point, if you have found all these value players, right, and maybe it's just making sure Jameer Dean doesn't go to Georgia. Maybe that's them splashing the pot. Is they have a 4-star top 150 receiver that's a secret star, in my opinion, and maybe they decide that's more valuable to keep.
Yeah, he ran a 10.69 this week too. And
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we can talk. I feel like we've had this conversation for 3-4 years now, and nothing that situation doesn't really happen a ton. So why is that? To me, it's not there, or at least sustainably. Sure, it can be there. Like, okay, let's best way to put this: Oregon, Texas Tech, Miami. Okay, they're the only 3 that are splashing crazy money and having success. Am I wrong with that, Sean? Like going overly aggressive. Like Ohio State doesn't really do that. Am I wrong? I mean, like a lot of the other schools haven't had to do it. Notre Dame has money.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has money, but they're not. I don't think they're being like Leighton Von Brandt's a perfect example, in my opinion. They could have gone a little more aggressive there, but they didn't. I mean, they're doing wrong. They got money. I think they just have a bigger pot, a way bigger pot than where Oregon and Texas Tech and Miami have a way bigger pot, and they're willing to say, all right, here's 60% over what this school's turn us down.
I mean, everybody's got their valuations, right? Like you look at Notre Dame and Leighton Von Brandt. That guy was in the class there last week. Like it was one of those things where you expected him to come in at a certain number, and then Auburn comes in with a much bigger number, and it's like, more power to you, man. Like these coaches, these GMs, they're humans too. Like they understand the numbers, but they also understand like, I ain't paying that much. It's part of the process right now.
So, but there is a part of the evaluation, and I already stated this, but you made me, when you say splashing the pot, like if you've got pocket aces on a recruit and you feel like this kid loves your school, Khalil Taylor loves Penn State, he's been here a ton, and you feel like, okay, if we just put more ante in it, like we're going to win this hand, and it's going to be worth it because of the evaluation of this player is that we think, just go back to the Colorado conversation. This guy is a star, and he is going to make a meaningful, impactful difference. I'm not saying it is Khalil Taylor. They might not think that about Khalil Taylor. They may think he's just the same as another 4-star recruit, but it does seem like some of these schools are saying, okay, this is our hand to win. We are going to go in on this one, and we feel like you don't have the same cards that we do, and so as long as you mentioned, match, or maybe $1 more, Bob, it could be their guy, and I think that's some of the question about this. So I don't want to reframe the question and ask you again, right? So that just kind of the perspective of it.
Just a slippery slope. I think, it's easy for us to look at the wins right now of Gabe Jenkins for Colorado, but what we're not thinking about is all of the times that's happened at so many schools over the last class or two, and it's amounted to absolutely nothing. So, we can sit here on this show and point out the immediate ones that we're thinking about the second, but there's quite a few examples of guys getting drastically overpaid, and it looks really stupid in the end.
Okay. So final thing here for the OV previews is any other players, names, position battles you think are interesting and bring up. Maybe we could talk a little bit about linebacker. Somebody asked earlier in the chat about Case Alexander. You guys have brought up Tyson Washington a couple of times. I got some highlights I wanted to play. So can you guys riff a little bit about the linebacker situation and what you think that might look like in the next couple of weeks?
Wrote about that. Yeah, I wrote about that yesterday on Blue White Illustrated. Definitely check that out because it's one of those ones I think it's going to come down in the next couple of weeks. And I think those guys will make it to OV season. We talked often about Case Alexander potentially making a decision. The fact of the matter is that kid doesn't talk. So like we're working off conjecture from people around him and, people around the programs that he's considering right now. So I think that you're looking at the next couple of weeks as very important weeks in the linebacker realm. They were down to see Tyson Washington again yesterday. They really like that kid. That's a Ryan. If we're going to do that piece where we talk about guys that we're not talking about enough, Tyson Washington might be one of those guys. So there's a lot to like as a different style linebacker.
He's like a traditional Sam here on film where he's playing off the edge and playing in space. So I think they're going to like that.
Yeah, him and Case Alexander, yin and yang. I mean, for everything we just said about the defensive tackles being different types of players, this is probably even more stark in terms of what those guys eventually will be. So you look at that, and again, they're both 6'3", I think. Washington might be a little bit taller than that. So like you've got bigger bigger players that you're trying to add to the fold at every
Are
position.
you saying Caleb Bacon without saying Caleb Bacon? Because that was the first thing I thought. Maybe not from total package, but like that's what
I
it
didn't
looks
say
like.
neck roll. So like Case Alexander's a neck roll guy.
Yeah.
I like Tyson Washington a lot. I think he's gonna be
Yeah, he's got some great film there. And if you're listening on the podcast version, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Super helpful if you do that. And follow us if you're not following us here, so you get the updates when we have our lives or breaking or commitment videos. And of course, like, just listen and enjoy. That's always what we want you guys to do here. We got a ton of people here on the live show. We've had an awesome chat, great interactions. And so like the video if you've enjoyed all of this. Last thing we got to get to today is the class of 2028. So what we just outlined is there's a couple of players left for 2027, and then it's going to be the, keep away until signing day, making sure everyone stays in the class. And a lot of what's been happening from offers standpoint, if you've been following Ryan and Fitz on Twitter, which you should, has been a lot of offers to the class of 2028. And so there was a Rivals 300 update for the next class that came out on Monday. And Ryan, you did some work on this. What'd you learn about the next wave of Penn State Nittany Lion targets?
Simon Nuama. Sean, how do I pronounce his last name? Do you know?
That's all you, buddy. I'm not the pronunciation guy. We all know this.
He's good. I like him. I mean, listen, 27, honestly, a little surprised me a little bit, but like, I really like this young man. 6'2", 260 D lineman out of the Brooks School. Or excuse me, no, he's at Tabor now, right? I think he went to Tabor.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was originally out of the Bronx. Really good looking prospect who went from unranked to now 5-star. Let me try. Oh, Mekhi Brown. Here we go again. That'll be interesting to see how that one plays out for Penn State. But there was the other lineman in the area who's ranked incredibly highly. I'm trying to think who it's defensive line. Oh, is it Tyson Swan? They won't get Swan though. I thought there was another guy. I'm drawing a blank, but it's a very good year, or at least it looks like top heavy wise for some defensive linemen in the region, which I think is encouraging for Penn State. Whether they have the money to pay for that, we'll see. Not trying to be negative. We spent way too much time on that on this show, I think. But just kind of moving forward here, I was kind of looking more so at like the Pennsylvania guys. That was kind of more what I was focused on. Jaden Jones out of Avonworth looks like a really good athlete. Somebody I'm very encouraged by. I think Penn State's kind of top 3 or 4 with him at the moment, kind of starting off early. Kentucky, South Carolina, UCLA, a few others are in the mix there. James Armstrong, Sean, we talked about him the other day, quarterback out of Hopewell. Probably Penn State's best spot right now with one of those elite quarterbacks in the region, I would think. I mean, there's obviously a very, very long way to go there, but to me, he's the one that kind of pops right now. He's number 101 nationally. And by the way, Jaden Jones is number 77. They're number 2 and 3 in Pennsylvania. Of course, Deontay Flemings is already committed. Notre Dame stays on him. He's added some really good offers to Auburn, like Tennessee, Texas A&M. He seems pretty firm though with Penn State. Sean, have you talked to Deontay Flemings much? I'm just curious. Like, have you gotten to know him much?
Not really. No, I've tried to stay
kid.
out of 2028 for the most part.
I thought so. I just like I'm trying to get to know him too. Honestly, I'm so far behind on 2028 right now, like compared to so many years, just because we just had to get to know this whole new 2027 group, like in December, right? Like I was Landon Bloom, like I didn't know any of these guys for the longest time. So I still got to get to know a lot of them. But Flemings might even still be a little underrated. Talking to Charles and some other guys, we have at number 17 cornerback right now, 4 in PA. I think there's a chance he could end up being a top 100 guy. So, Sean, I don't know if there's anybody you want to talk about specifically. I can roll through 1,000 different names, but I think, look, it's 10 guys from PA, pretty good number, very similar to this year. New Jersey looks to be pretty good. It's a solid class so far, these rankings, but as Sean will tell you, so much is going to change. So,
yeah,
it's not,
there you go.
And my question is, what is the talent like in the middle states of Kansas, Nebraska, and wherever else the Iowa State footprint was before they came over here? Because I think there's going to be some guys that kind of filter in over there from maybe North Dakota as they try to build out the East Coast connections, but also still have everything that, as Fitz mentioned, that they had previously, and how those are going to still be a part of the conversation for 2028 probably. And of course, like, you know, I think Matt Campbell is going to go into Ohio and get an offensive lineman every single year that he can, because they've done that one of the last 3 years with their last 3 classes. It seems to be part of that conversation. Fitz, final thoughts from you? I know you got to bounce here quickly, so just wanted to give you final thoughts here, and then we'll get out.
George Parkinson at 176 overall, I do not like at all. That's pretty much my only thoughts. With 2028, he's a dude. So no, I mean, you look all over, and Ryan wrote up Pennsylvania in top 10 in 2028, and you know, it's hard to get too excited about these very early. I like Owen Johnson a lot at LaSalle College, high school wide receiver there. Nick Anderson's at Kieske is a legacy offensive lineman there. So yeah, I think it's a good looking group, but like, as you're going to find out, we rank these guys way too early, and some of these guys are going to fall off completely. You look at Jerome LaRue, is committed to Maryland. He's a top 300 guy. I don't know that he ends there, you know? So like, there's a lot of guys that are on the radar right now that I think, you know, just talking 2028 rankings and stars and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're like getting to the point where it's getting to where 2027 is actually okay. Like, all of Penn State's 2027 commits now have actual composite industry rankings, because ESPN has finally gotten around to ranking everybody. So like, we're just getting there in 2027. So 2028, that's a long way off for me.
Yeah. Fitz, appreciate you being here. Ryan, I want to make sure he had to get somewhere. Ryan, any final thoughts from you as we got here on today's show? And it sounds like you and I maybe have maybe coming back tomorrow for everybody here on the channel. So make sure everyone subscribes so that you don't miss if there is a commitment video. So any final thoughts?
Just keeping an eye on like I said, Curry tomorrow, and you know, there's certainly a couple guys that I think are close. Well, that'll be Memorial Day weekend or next week, we'll see. But there's certainly, I think we talked about the last show, like the coaches, and not just Penn State, all of them, they kind of hold the power at the moment, right? To get guys where once these visits start happening, it kind of then shifts back to the players. So coaches are working hard, obviously, to push those commitments through here at the end. I think they're going to get at least one. And as Sean said, it wouldn't shock me if they got to 20. So, you know, a good 2 weeks to go here before then. I could see them being at 20. That doesn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me.
All right. Well, like I said, make sure you check in tomorrow to see if Penn State's getting another commitment. Best way is to enable notifications here on the channel, which means you got to subscribe and get that information when it drops if Penn State gets another player, and we'll give you the details of not only what can Sean Curry do, not what does his film look like, but also how he got here, the relationship, all that stuff. That's how we break things down on our committed video series. If you haven't seen one before, oh, there's so many things to promote and talk about. I just got to get going. Thanks, everybody, for the time. We'll be back next Tuesday with more Penn State football talk here on the BWI Live Show. We'll talk to you then.